Hey guys, in this video we're going to talk about table saw safety. You know, and I hope I don't tell you a thing you don't already know and don't already do. But like I said, there's a lot of new guys out there, and we're just going to take a look at some things to keep you safe. And believe me, I know about the importance of being safe on a table saw and how quick you can get injured. All right. One of the most common problems with the table saw is guys trying to cut thin stock or narrow stock rather, like this. That is one of the most unsafe practices you can humanly do. Here's why. When you get in here and you're trying to go through, there's not enough bearing surface against the fence. And the least little wiggle, one way or the other, and the teeth on the blade are going to grab it and throw it back at you. And often they can pull your hand into the blade. The other thing is the height of the blade. You never want a blade. We have a saying around here. It says, don't put the blade any higher over the piece you're cutting than you're willing to get cut. It's that simple. A half a tooth is sufficient. That's just the way it is. The other thing that happens is we get what's called a pinch. And that's where you're ripping something, and ripping is cutting in the long way. And the wood has stress in it, and it pinches against the blade, and when it pinches against the blade, it's going to try to throw it back at you. Now, there's a lot of things we can do to take care of this. When you're cutting a small piece like this, always use a miter slide. Always. That's what they're made for. When you've got something backing you up, the key is to never pinch anything between the fence and the blade. Even with a miter slide, if I make this cut, when it's cut, this piece of wood is going to be sitting here loose, pinched in between the blade and the fence. And just the vibration and just the general workings of the saw can create a slight vibration, and one of these teeth can catch the edge of it and it's going to throw it back at you. Now that's the reason when you're cutting on a table saw, this is not where you want to be. You want to be to the side, because this is the line of fire. Now, you see this vest I've got on? A vest, an apron, even something as simple as a thick, heavy sweatshirt. I saw kick back a piece on a guy, and he had one of those big old metal brass belt buckles on it, and it smacked him right here and it broke the buckle. Now, if you've never had that happen, there's two things can happen. One is, depending upon what it's throwing back, it can go into you. It can hurt you bad. And if it doesn't, and it just comes back and smacks you, well, believe me, it will smack you. You ever done a belly flop swimming? You know, well, take that and multiply it by about 30 and put it all in one spot. It only has to happen to you once, and you'll understand the importance of doing this. I know you've already seen this and everybody's talked about it, but just so you know, if you're just using a miter slide, the best way to do it is to just take something as simple as a block of wood, clamp it to your fence, and this would be your measurement point. Then when you make your cut, this piece of wood is not pinched. Now you've all seen this, David Marks on TV, something as simple as a pencil eraser to, once the cut is made, to be able to move the piece out of the way and get it gone. Don't put your fingers down in here. just don't. A better alternative that we'll look at in a little bit is a table saw sled, something you make. We were talking about the pinching. A splitter or a riving knife, that's what this is absolutely essential. I never do anything without a splitter or rive. I just don't. It just makes a whole lot of sense. Another thing guys do, and I know this is a touchy subject, but I also know it to be true. Your guard. Everybody removes the guard. You hate them. Well, it is what it is. The other thing is that when you're ripping or anything, don't get your fingers in here. Something as simple as a push stick. And this particular design, it's pretty simple. Works extremely well. The reason being is when I'm pushing, I have a pawl or a catch right here. The length of it allows me to put a force down on the piece of wood. In other words, when I'm pushing forward, but I'm also able to push down. Now, these are best made out of a plywood, or in this case, we simply use some composite decking, the Trex stuff. Solid wood is not the best bet. The reason being, in this area right here, your grain is running across, and the pushing down, they break pretty easy. If you're going to use solid wood, drill up through it and run you a little 1/4 inch dowel or something up through there to reinforce that handle. We usually just, you can check with a contractor around that's doing decking, or you can buy you a piece. This is just a piece of 5/8 inch Trex from one of the box stores. And it makes really nice. And the reason for it is that if you engage the blade, then it's no big deal. And it's soft enough that it's not going to be pushing back at you. Now, I like a pair of gloves. And I like the fingerless gloves. That's just me. But I like something so that when I'm pushing wood and whatever the case, I've got something back here protecting the back of my hand, just so I'm not going to catch a splinter or something off the end and make me jump or move. Safety glasses that's a given. That's just a given. And I've told you about this, here's the safety glasses. These are the bifocal deals. If you don't do that, you can get the over-the-glass safety glasses. And one of my favorites is a shield. It just protects your whole face. No matter how good your dust collection is, without a guard or something to be forcing the chips down into the saw, you really want a good dust mask. The other thing that I like as close as I can to a zero insert. And what is a zero insert? That's where there's not much space between the blade. Why? In ripping, we've all seen this. On ones that are open, a thin strip that's coming off the left side of the blade, they all fall. Blade will grab it and suck it down in. Well, that's not a huge deal. Just be prepared for it. But here is the deal. If you're cutting something long, I've seen them grab it and it tries to take it down, but then it's going to try to come back and smack at you. So having something on to protect you or shield, it just makes a whole lot of sense. Keeping your saw tuned up and everything nice and straight and square and all that is just absolutely imperative. Good sharp blade. Now here's an issue that comes in. Most guys will have a table saw blade and they will just run it until there's nothing, until it's just so dull. Dull blades bind, they pinch, they burn the wood, they're just a misery and they're not safe. These are anti-kickbacks. Now, if you're having a blade sharpened, particularly with an anti-kickback blade, you really want somebody who knows what they're doing, because when they grind the tooth, they also have to grind the anti-kickback pawl. If they don't grind the kickback pawl, then what happens is that the pawl is actually higher than the blade, than the tooth. And an anti-kickback pawl, what it does is, if you look very carefully, it comes up and it's designed to keep this wood from being able to catch and force into the tooth behind it. That's what it's for. So a 24 to a 30 tooth for rip. When you get into a 60, 80 teeth, these are cross cuts. End grain and flat grain, which is when you're cutting long, cut differently. And so a finer tooth does better on a cross cut. It's also what's used for ripping plywoods and things. Here's kind of a middle of the road. And this is a 50 tooth, and it's a combination. Now, I'm not going to give you a whole lecture and a thing on saw blades, but a lot of it has to do with the hook angle and all of that stuff. But just note that different blades are designed to do different things. Now, what I'm running on here now is a crosscut. And can I rip with it? Well, yeah, but I don't want to try to get into thick, heavy stock. Just not gonna. Now, the other thing is, on a table saw, is we have a term called sneak up on it. And it doesn't just apply to a table saw, it's everything. You know, when you take a large piece of wood, I see guys will take a piece of wood that's 6, 8, 10 inches wide, whatever, and they want a 2-inch piece. And they just roll down through there and cut 2 inches. That doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is because, again, you're relieving stress inside of the wood. And unless that wood has no stress and there's no issues whatsoever, what you're going to get coming off the blade, you've seen it, you watch it. It'll go out like this, or it can try to pinch in. So if I need a 2-inch piece, I'm going to cut it. My first cut's going to be at least 2 1/4. Then I'm going to come back and true that up and sneak up on coming to my final dimension. Just makes sense. No matter what you do, you want something on your table saw to protect yourself. Now, we've shown you this little gadget. It's nothing fancy. I mean, that's all it is. A few screws or staples or whatever. And we use the magnets. Makes for a neat little... And the magnets work extremely well. You know, just something to keep our hands away from or anything trying to kick back. You can also make you a feather board. What's a feather board? Well, they're not difficult. And what a feather board does is it sets down on it, and as the wood goes through, the fingers flex, and this little sharp front edge on the finger will catch it, anything trying to kick back. And you know, you can do a rig. I've got one, and I don't have it here, that sits in my saw. Got 2 magnets on it, little side coming up. My feather board sits right here with a slot and a nut and a bolt, and I can adjust it to the height. To help hold this way against the fence, never, ever, ever put it against the blade. If you put it against the blade, then the piece that you're trying to remove is going to be, you're actually forcing it into the blade. You just created an issue. Okay, now this one, we just simply tighten this down, and then sometimes you'll see the holes in it. We'll use the magnets to make a feather board. That helps hold it this way. Table saw safety is common sense. I'm going to tell you this again. If it doesn't feel safe to you, it isn't. When you're handling big sheet goods or you're handling something long, all you need to focus on when you're operating a table saw is the cut itself. You don't need to be struggling trying to lift, hold something. If that's the case, you need some help. Or you need to do something different, because that's not safe. You know, having something like a set of rollers to where a long piece, you can lay them up here, lay it on it, and you can more comfortably guide your wood. I've showed you this. We call it our saw dog. Nothing more. It's a sawhorse with some rollers on the top, and you want to make it so it's level with your table saw. So if you're operating sheet goods, or even someone helping you, you're operating sheet goods lay on this. This little cleat right here is just made so that this moves right along with it. Supporting your work's what we're talking about. Outfeed table. Absolutely, you know, whether you make one, rig up one, whatever you do, you need an outfeed table. Because as you're taking pieces across, they're going to fall. And you're sitting here trying to hold this piece. You got a piece coming off this side of the blade, and you're trying to hold it up and get down to the switch to get it off. Having your switch located with a paddle switch where you can take your knee and just bump it and turn it off, that's smart. Table saws, the workhorse of the shop. Don't jeopardize your safety. It just is not worth it.